G'day, welcome back. I'm back from Canada and the US. I remain the same person, which is Sid. I'm still the Baz Luhrmann of RPGs, and I'm still trying to design a game for no good reason. Most importantly, I over the last 3 weeks wasn't able to really get into a good space for designing. I was outside of my usual comfort zone. I was working on a laptop. Everything was just difficult. And I didn't have a lot of free time either, but we're back now. So I can talk about what I have done. Before we actually go into what I've done, I think it'll be good to start back at our refocusing, back at the beginning. So I think the biggest thing that happened is that while I was away, I rewatched the Tomorrow When the War Began movie and reread the first book. And that movie is not good, but the book is all right. It's pretty good YA fiction, and it's a little bit more what I want, which is this idea of like teenage civilians rather than adults. I think that people can get their heads around teenagers not being inherently violent, not being inherently soldiery, a lot easier than they can get their head around adults not doing that. So that's going to work out for us. It also does this encouraging intimacy, working together thing that because teenagers are just big old balls of feels. Aim is to survive long enough to collect enough value that they can purchase transport outside the city. That tone is intimate and focused and desperate and all that sort of stuff. Small ambitions, external pressure. External pressure is an interesting thing because that's kind of going away. That's being traded on with a lot of internal conflict as well. Not heroic, not gonzo. So, priorities of teamwork, living world, and oppressive economy. Great. Okay. So that's where we were. We've gone into this more focused teenage thing, and with that has come a lot more focusing with the moves. Basic moves got really interesting because I was in this really. So we got through the interrogating fiction, which is reading the lay of the land and fill them out. We got through that intimacy move of share what little you have. We got through, I don't know if we did interfering, but we will talk about this now. So we're going to talk about what moves I did right, and then we're going to talk about why I need to go over them all again and look at them like 3 or 4 more times because of a very unique problem that I have in this design. So here's what I've got. When you interfere with another, you roll plus bonds instead of your usual stat, then set your bonds to 0. Oh, yeah, okay, let's talk about stats. Kind of have to talk about stats before we go any further, because that was something I decided on. Originally, I wanted to just use luck and guts, and it be based on like, these are the things that got you this far, right? You either survive by luck or you survive by your guts. The second thing that does is that for people who have read Night Witches, it creates a negative design space in that you have luck, guts, but no skill. But that was just a really nice kind of hidden thing in there. It wasn't a super important part of that structure. It also kept it really minimal. So I've spoken before about how I wanted to, I don't want to go in with 6 stats and try to cover all the bases. I want it to be really, really lean. And I think that this is going to work out. The only thing I need to figure out, and my good friend Jesse Ross really helped me out with this one, is what does my social stat look like? So how do I define how well people are interacting or how close they are? And I ended up just using the word plus bonds. And then we decided that, as we were talking, that maybe bonds should be something that moves up and down. And we'll probably do an episode entirely on social stats, the way that Hex does and stuff like that. But I think what I wanted bonds to be really fluid. And Jesse's idea was like, what about when you have 0 or negative bonds, or when you're like, I don't know, bond damaged or bond exhausted or whatever, you can't engage in the teamwork rolling aspect of the game. And I quite like that. I quite like it as like as a conceptual thing. And so what we decided was have a really fluid bond economy where you every time you roll with bonds, you reset it to 0, and then a lot of moves give you the option to add 1 to bonds. And that what's an example of that? I don't think there's really anything that replicates, because it's such a short economy. Because like over the course of 3 moves, you should be able to go from 0 bonds to 1, and then roll with bonds to go back to 0, and then do another move to get +1. Like, it should be really easy. And because it's really easy to spend and really easy to get, and because it doesn't affect because of the way that my dice mechanic works, with the fact that we're looking for ties, it gives me a benefit that adding +1 bond and then being able to roll really high on bonds doesn't actually throw my balance off too much, which is really good. So when you interfere with another, you roll plus bonds instead of your usual stat, and then you set your bonds to 0. And that's going to be a really that's going to be a common language thing. When you roll plus bonds, you set your bonds to 0. If you have a successful tie, you can choose to make it a mix and give the other PC the higher result instead. If you are the high roll, you can choose not to resolve your result. And if you are their low roll, or you have a low tie, you resolve as normal. So the idea behind this interfering with another is it allows you to participate in the teamwork role without helping the other person succeed. So let's say what's a move we've spoken about. So okay, we're gonna read the lay of the land. You really want to do this fiction interrogation move, and I'm like, no, I don't want you to. You're like, no, I'm gonna climb out onto the top of the crow's nest. I'm gonna like look out over the city and read the lay of the land. I'm like, but I don't want you to do that. I want you to come downstairs and just play Monopoly with us. So I'm gonna interfere with you, and if I interfere, we can't get this. We can't get this top result, and that's fine. And that's because we're not working together. So there's no reason we can get we sync up result. That should be called a sync. And that should be called a sync. Oh boy, that's bad design. Oh boy. I'm going to leave this, but I just want everyone to know how terrible that is. But it's one of those things I like, but I hate at the same time. Okay, so okay, the problem with using a homophone like that is that inevitably it's going to come down to a conversation at the table, which is like, I rolled a sync. Okay, but did you roll a sync or a sync? Well, we got a tie. Yeah, but they're both of the ties are called syncs. Oh, that's going to be so bad. Oh, fuck. Oh, let's do it anyway. All right. So, I can't get over how dumb that is. All right. Okay. So we're acting. I'm interfering with you. We roll. I get the high result. You get the low result. I don't want to pick from the high table because the high table is all about benefits, and I don't want you to benefit from this because I'm trying to stomp you down. So I can just choose not to engage with this result, which means that I'm not going to give you a benefit. I'm not going to give you someone showing interest in us. I'm not going to give you what's our best way in, way out, way through. I'm not going to give you. I'm not going to ask a question. It's not. Now I can if I want, but I'm choosing not to. If I roll and and by the way, you still pick the low result, so you still have to choose a cost. You still have to choose this crucial detail. You still have to figure out if you've been trapped or deceived. Like, you don't get to I'm basically making you so the mixed result is usually the success end a bit and the success with cost, and I'm getting rid of the success end a bit and I'm giving you just the cost, basically. So you're rolling with just the cost. However, if I am the low result, then I pick as normal. But the benefit is the power that still gives me is that as the low result, I'm still choosing what that cost means. So in a move like the Interrogation is a little bit different. In the move like the aggressively engaging with each other move, I'm still picking that you're going to have to pay someone, or that we're all getting tired, or that someone's getting violent. But we're going to talk about that as we approach it. So that's the interfere move, which I'm really happy with. The thing I like about it mostly is that, so we spoke about 8 interfere and how we don't want 8 interfere to be +1s and -1s on top of existing structure. And that means that this interfere is it's integrated into the existing structure of the game, which I like. I'm just getting to the notifications. I just want to make sure this stream thing is going out there, and it's not. And it's not people notifying me, telling me it's not working or something. Nope, looks good. And chat's up, so no, okay, thank you. All right, so let's talk about the next move that I got to. So I'm going to put this into black for now, just because it's a little bit easier to read on the screen. So try to forget the war. So fictionally, trying to forget the war is about doing stuff that you shouldn't be able to do in this kind of situation. So it's stuff like kids playing Monopoly with each other. It's stuff like, I think I mentioned try to sleep alone as a move I wanted. This is try to sleep alone. Try to forget the war is when it's for stuff that you do as a group that isn't based on share what little you have. It's not based on intimacy, but it is based on spending time distracting yourselves, I guess. So the idea behind try to forget the war is that you're rolling plus luck. On a sync, on a high sync, you find comfort in quiet places, reduce your weariness, add 1 to bonds. So this has been really good, this add 1 to bonds thing, because I'm able to offer players a reward that they want without it being too powerful, I guess. In that, like, if you guys just try to forget the war 3 times in a row and just keep getting high rolls and it's all fine, and you end up with bonds +3, like, that's okay. It's not a particular problem with the game. It's not going to break the structure of the game. High. So it's not home, but it feels like it. Choose 1. The moment is simple but magic. You both reduce your weariness. The moment is simple, but the company is something else. You both add 1 to your bonds. So this is something I've been doing a lot, which is when I'm not really sure what to do, I split up my high result and I put it together for the high sync, which is nice. Low. It reminds you of what you've forgotten and choose 1. So try in vain to find the happiness. Try to find in vain to find of the. Oh my god. Try in vain to find the happiness. Lost. Waste a couple of scrap on something frivolous and temporary. Or the water's one if you've forgotten. Ask the GM how the wall remind you it's close. This is basically, do you want to spend? We should talk about this at some point too. This is basically, do you want to spend your resources for safety, or do you want to keep your resources but put the dice in the GM's hand, basically? So this is really important. I've spoken a lot about the different types of moves that can come out of undefined stakes, I guess. So a really good example of that is, let's talk about the Sprawl and Monsterhearts, because they're the two that I'm always going to go to for this. So Monsterhearts is there, the Sprawl is here, and the Sprawl, let's go for noon, and we'll find the matrix moves. Okay, cool. So in our good friend Monsterhearts, so in Keep Your Cool, when you keep your cool and act despite fear, name what you're afraid of, roll with cold. On a 7 to 9, the MC will tell you how your actions would leave you vulnerable, and you can choose to back down and go through with it. So, being what it is, which is a move, an open-ended, broad, negative, design space move, it's the act under fire move, right? The result is, well, there's going to be a cost. But because that negotiation isn't inherent in the move, what Avery's done here is to give you a chance for the GM to say, this is going to end badly. It's going to look like this. Do you still want to engage with this move, basically? It's the same in Lash Out Physically, where... Oh, sorry, it's written differently in Lash Out Physically, but I usually end up playing it the same, which is this line about the MC decides how bad the harm turns out. Because what happens is, okay, imagine this situation. We're playing Monsterhearts. I'm a werewolf, so I love being volatile. I come on to someone and they turn me down, and then I'm like, oh, right, whatever. They complain about me to a teacher. The teacher comes to me and is like, look, we need to have a chat. And as we're talking, I turn to the MC and I'm like, I don't want to be here anymore. And they say, well, you're in detention kind of thing. You got to be here. I say, nope. I push the teacher in the chest and I run out the door. And we're like, well, we could just go into run away, but we want to talk about Lash Out Physically, so let's talk about that. I roll a 7 to 9 and I say the MC decides how bad the harm turns out, and the MC is like, yeah, he falls backwards and cracks his head on the desk and he dies, and that's 4 harm, and you've killed a dude. That is such a... That fictional increase is so outside the realm of what was negotiated by the move that it can be jarring to the player, where the player and the MC can have different expectations. Apocalypse World is built almost entirely around there never being a moment where the MC and the players have different expectations of what's going to happen. Even if a player is like, oh, well, I've got a +2 in hot, I'm not going to fail this, and they roll 2 ones and they get their 4, and they're like, oh, okay, maybe I did fail. They knew that was an opportunity, and they knew what a failure kind of meant because the MC moves and all that sort of stuff. So that's a little bit of a weird moment there, where act under keep your cool. Keep your cool says the MC will give you the stakes before you decide, but Lash Out Physically says the MC will decide kind of after you've made your decision. And so the Sprawl is really different, and we will talk about the Sprawl. Is so log in. I think we talk about this all the time, but I'm really okay with it. Log in on a 7 to 9. You get a passive trace. Ice is activated. An alert is triggered. Your access is restricted. All of these are defined, right? So this is something I asked Hamish about, and he's hopefully going to talk about in his PBTA stream coming up. Hamish is very big on defining what these mean, and it creates a known outcome where if I'm a 7 to 9 and I choose 1 and I choose an alert is triggered, I know that that's what's going to happen. Mechanically, we're going to advance the active mission clock. We might get more fictional inputs, but mechanically, we're going to advance the active mission clock. And there's a real benefit to that because it allows players to know the choice. So coming back to my problem here, the war doesn't want to be forgotten. So again, move about people playing Monopoly. You're the lower one. Reminds you of what you've forgotten. Choose one. The war doesn't want to be forgotten. Well, I can't. Yeah, that's why those are there, because that cannot go together. Ask the GM how the war will remind you it's close. Now, this could be everything from the GM could say, you look over at Jeremy and you see the knife that he's had strapped to his leg for a couple of days now, and it just reminds you that, like, when he hurt that dude, and it just pushes you a little bit further away from him. So I'm going to get you to reduce your bonds to 0, or whatever, something like that. The problem is that's one outcome where the player might have the same expectations as GM, but it can also be the war doesn't want to be forgotten, and the GM's like, yeah, like a bomb comes crashing into your safe house and it's destroyed. And that's no longer a good safe house for you. And I feel like that kind of goes outside of, like, they're both the same MC move, right? Which is take away their stuff or use up their stuff. But it doesn't. Oh, I also realized that I had to shave my beard off while I was in Canada to work on their ambulances because of their face masks. And it's growing back, but I'm sorry. It's my first owl with no beard. So the problem is that there's pros and cons to both sides. This isn't something that I can just look at and say, oh no, well, this is how game design should be done. Because the broader, more flexible system, the way that we set it up where it just says RCMC what happens, does two things. One, it allows the stakes to be, it allows the table to make more decisions for themselves, which makes you feel more like you're playing a role-playing game rather than playing like a board game or whatever. And the second thing it does is it allows the GM to mediate the pacing. So we're going to go back to the Sprawl, because this is what we spoke about last time we spoke about the Sprawl, which is that if your mission's going really well and you're doing the login move and you get +1 trace, that might not mean anything at the time. And it's a shame because it's a really dramatic moment and they roll a 7 to 9 and you want it to have this really immediate impact. But the only impact you can offer them by the rules of their choice and by the rules of the Sprawl, the only impact you can give them is +1 trace. And that creates pacing problems at the table. Yeah. So that's the question. Ask the GM how the war will remind you it's close. So at the moment, that move kind of doesn't say either way, but it's it was originally written as the GM will tell you how the war reminds you it's close. But the issue with that is that it created that lash out physically problem of my expectations, your expectations not aligning. Let's go on to tend to someone's damage. Tend to someone's damage is the healing move. It's also a recovery move. One of the things that were really important to me in this game is that physical violence is not a different stress track to mental violence. I had my least engaging interactions with Fate Core when we realize that I don't have fake core in here, is when we realize that half of the group is trying to attack someone physically, and the other half are trying to attack someone mentally. Fate accelerated is the biggest reason that like I'm aware of that being a different thing, because Fate accelerated only has the one stress track, and it's really good. Conflicts. Okay, the SRD doesn't have a good picture, unfortunately. Okay. Let's go to Fate downloads. So one of the things that were important to me is to replicate the character sheet, is to replicate the stress track of accelerated, basically. So this is what Fate accelerated looks like. You have stress and you have consequences. And so if I punch you in the face and I deal 2 stress, we mark that off. And if I say a quippy one-liner that does 2 stress, it would like mark off the same box. It's not like they're different. Whereas this is Fate core, and you can see that, well, Fate core has physical stress and mental stress, and it breaks those out. Which is fine, but it's not what I wanted to do, because I don't want physical mistakes to only cost you in the physical field, and I don't want mental mistakes to only cost you in the mental field. So basically, I don't want if you run the sniper lines in daylight and you get shot, I don't want you to then just be able to continue your day as normal. I want it to kind of fuck your ride up. And we'll probably talk about some what harm means and stuff at some point. So turn to someone's wounds, or turn to someone's damage, sorry. So damage is an important word here, because it's not just physical damage, like it's your baggage as well, your emotional damage. When you turn to someone's damage, each choose an amount of scrap to use, and then roll plus scrap spent. On a hit, you erase all of the patient's wounds, and you feel their weariness. They're going to need to sleep it off for a bit. So the idea here is that there are 2 different, even though physical and mental are on the same track, the track has a line down the middle of it where everything on this side is weariness, and that's you kind of getting slowly beat down by the situation. And everything on this side is like those unstable wounds, the things where you're getting fucked up and bleeding out. It's very Monster of the Week in that, actually. Let's pull up Monster of the Week. And the Hunters, the playbooks. Okay, so Monster of the Week looks like this. You've got these 3 boxes that are like, okay, and then these 4 boxes are you dying, and that's kind of what I wanted to replicate. Now they have unstable as an extra tick. I'm happy with pretty much just anything here being unstable, or it being fictionally. This might not be a bad idea, but I don't think I want to have it on the sheet. It takes up a lot of real estate that I don't want to spend. So the idea is, looking at this Monster of the Week thing again, actually, the idea is when you're dealing with this stuff up here, you tick them off and you fill this. These are kind of independent. They can each be filled independently. But in order to heal one of these, you're going to wipe someone out unless you roll really well. Because when you roll really well, you can recover half of the scrap you each spent, or you can make it an intimate process. So it means something putting flesh to flesh like this. You and someone of your choice can add 1 to your bonds. You can get through this without the heavy meds. They can also reduce their weariness. So instead of filling their weariness, maybe we their weariness to 2 points, I guess. Maybe 1 point, because that's a really good one. It's a high quality, you can recover half the scrap you spent. And you won't need as many. Then in the low choices, it'll take a bit more of your meds than you thought. Ask the GM how much. Whatever you've given them probably was meant for human consumption. They stay like damaged, like they have 1 point of harm still. And it's just a patch job. It's like an aggravate if they don't rest up. Cool. So that's the healing move. Going toe to toe. So going toe to toe is an important one because it's about how to assert your will on other people. But it created a very specific design challenge that I still haven't fixed, which is why this one's in red as well. The basic idea behind going toe to toe, and you can pause and read that if you like, but it's I think I'm going to be able to give you enough of it here, which is that when you go toe to toe, there are 3 positions you can be in. You can be high. If you're the high roll, you tell them how it's going to be, and so you tell them what the outcome is. You tell them what is going to happen, and you can give them something if they agree with you. And that can be like you give them one of your stash, or you give them some resources. You can promise them something fictionally, or you can do another thing, which is you can tell them you'll owe them a favor, but there's no mechanical backing for that, which means that you have to trust the other player or the other character to fulfill that at some point, which is quite like it. The lower role, you're the one that's defining the cost. So the high person never has to set a cost. They're giving the so in Apocalypse World, when you manipulate someone and you hit, you get the carrot and the stick. It's do it and you'll get experience. Don't do it and you'll remove. Like I'll remove one of your highlights, so you'll get less experience going forward. This is very similar, where the low person is basically setting the stick for the high person, which is like, someone's going to have to give up more. Like your stash that you promised me is not enough. Like you can have, if you want me to go along with you, you'll have to give up another one. Or like, I'm taking us all down. This is an argument. We're all going to get weary from this. We're all going to increase our weariness track because we're just going to argue. I'm not going to give up easily. Or my personal favorite, which is you just get violent. You're like, no, like we're going to sort this the fuck out. I'm not going to take you asserting your dominance over me. I'm just going to get violent, which is a choice the lower roller can make if they want to. Yeah. So what does that violence look like? So violence has 2 interesting differences, which is when you become the war, you roll plus nothing and you roll alone. Violence is not something you're inherently good at, and it's not something that other people can help you with. When you get violent, you push other people away. Violence is not a communal act. Violence is inherently a personal decision, and there is no negotiation that allows violence to bring people closer together, is I guess the point that I'm trying to make on that. On a 6 on the highest roll, you can get the war has made you someone or something else. You deal your harm, you enjoy what spoils it gives you, then you've changed. You reduce your luck or guts by 1 and increase the other by 1, and then you drop your bonds by 1. Now, I wouldn't mind this being like 2 minus 2 or something like that, but I also don't want this to be too damaging because it's your best result. On a 4 to 5, choose one. You pull your punch. You halve the harm you deal, and then you reduce your bonds by 2. Or you become a force to be reckoned with. You double the harm you deal, and then mark your out condition. The idea behind that is that you have 2 choices. You either don't engage fully with violence, and it just pushes you away from people a little bit, or you lean right into the violence. You double the harm that you deal, and then you are ostracized. You're excluded. You're out. You're not a part of things anymore. And then 1 to 3 is you're a hurricane. Not even the eye is safe. So when you are a hurricane, not even the eye is safe. Everyone involved marks out. So everyone involved, not just the person doing the violence, but like fucking everyone around you. Everyone around you marks out. You and everyone around you marks out. The war fucks you up, which is like you go to the highest level of damage just straight up, like you're just a fucking wreck. Or everyone with bonds higher than 0 resets them to 0, which is the idea that like you can hurt yourself a lot, you can hurt everyone a little bit, or you can hurt everyone other than you. Everyone with bonds higher than 0 resets to 0. I don't know, maybe it'd be like everyone's bonds drop by 2 or something like that, or like -1 or 3 even maybe. Like I want this to be like, because you as the player are kind of getting away with a lot here, on a 1 to 3. Trade harm. Not even the eye is safe. Trade harm, but not even the eye is safe. Yeah. So, the actual economy of this is something that's only going to come through in playtesting, but I want it to be hard. But that's kind of cool. So, cool. Let's talk about this. So this is the conditions track that I've been looking at the moment. So every time I talk about weariness, we're talking about this side. Every time I talk about damage, we're talking about this side. These words are all meant to be words that can be both physical and mental stuff. So you can be drained, you can be beat, or you can be out because of your physical or your mental impacts. Cold and fucked up. Or down, maybe. I kind of like down for cold. I'm not really sure which one I'm going to go with on that. This is something that's going to have to come to play because people are going to bring individual baggage to it. So playtesting is going to teach me a lot about this. Okay, when the war fucks you up, you roll plus luck and roll alone. Now, this is very much like the violence thing, but you're still rolling plus luck. So, like, there's still benefits to it, all that sort of stuff. On a 6, for now, you're okay. 6+, I guess, because you're rolling plus luck. That'd be 3-. For now, you're okay, but it will get worse. So even on your best result, you're okay. But if you don't get fixed up soon, you're in a lot of trouble. 4 to 5, pick one. 3- both. Your damage is dirty and big. You'll be a useless, agonizing, sick pile of meat for a few days. Your damage is vital. You'll die. This one's a little bit harder with this. And what happens if this is like a mental condition? Like what happens if it's a mental thing that fucks you up? Like you can pick the war fucks you up here, and instead of it being a harm trading thing, we can be like, oh, it's just like beating someone just absolutely fucks you up. Like you are just a changed person. So we mark that off, and then we roll this when the war fucks you up move. You roll plus luck and roll alone, and we get this, and we're like, wait, how is that killing me? And then you kind of got to retcon into some stuff, or like. But the other thing too is because of the setting and because of the scenario, you can retcon in people dying for like very good reasons, like them being sick and not knowing it, or having wounds that they weren't aware of and stuff like that. I don't know how many legs that has for continued play, but we'll see. So we were talking about the oppressive economy. Yeah, no thanks. And Jesse, Ross, and I sat and spoke about violence for a long time. For people who haven't seen it, this is very much where I landed on violence is very similar thematically to where I landed on violence in the Dogs in the Vineyard basic thing, which is, in fact, the move's almost the same. When you pull the trigger. In fact, actually, sorry. Yeah, here it is. So when you pull a piece to press the point is was a similar thematic space to going toe to toe, but it was about using violence to like beef up previous moves. But instead, so this one, pull the trigger. When you pull the trigger, first you take 1 stress, then you spend demonic influence and roll plus spent. You can commit as much violence as you need. They're as wounded as you need them to be. But on the 11 plus, there's no room for subtlety in the West. Choose one. They'll die here without feeling much, or they'll die tomorrow in a whole lot of pain. And that was really what, like, thematically, that speaks a lot about what I feel about violence, and especially violence in war, and especially violence for people who aren't soldiers, and especially violence for people who are teenagers. Yeah, so I'm a big fan of that. Oppressive economy. So oppressive economy, when you go without. Now the thing about go without is it's a fictional trigger. There's no lifestyle move at the moment except for this. Like, this is my entire lifestyle move, which is, I think the GM can turn to the group and just be like, it's going to cost you. And if at any time you want to anytime you want to spend scrap, or anytime you have to spend scrap and you don't have it, you go without. And that's you being hungry. And if you mark your lowest condition. If you cannot mark a condition, the war fucks you up and the MC makes a move as hard as they like, which is, first day, we're like, well, I don't want to eat. So, because we need this scrap. So I'm going to mark drained. And then you're like, okay, well that fucked everything up. So you're like, okay, I'm gonna mark drained. So you do. And then you're like, oh well, the second day, maybe I don't want to, but I've already been beat and I'm already out. So if I'm marking something, it's going to be damage. Like, fuck, that's really bad. Like, do I want to be put down with hunger? And then if you're full and you're forced to use up scrap and you don't have it, you just roll straight into this move that's gonna fucking wreck you. So that's that oppressive economy. When you're out, you're unconscious, ostracized, and lost in grief or similar. So when you're out, which is you've marked this condition, which, interesting loop, is also from where the violence comes in. So this was all designed at once with Jesse on Discord, and this is where designing as a package was really important to me. So again, going back to the Dogs and Darkness thing that I did, this Feel the Influence of Demons move came up a lot, and it's about moves feeding into each other. So when you spend a quiet moment in prayer and ritual and you roll an 11 plus, your mind is disquieted, you clear your stress track, you get what you want, but then you have to roll this Feel the Influence of Demons move. And that brings you over here to this other move, which then like snowballs more fiction. And that, like, it is kind of just the PBTA snowball, but it's explicit as part of the negotiation of the moves. And so this is where designing as a chunk and not looking at moves alone was really important to me, and it's something I need to look at in the future. So when you're out, you're unconscious, ostracized, lost in grief, or similar. So physical violence, social impact, your own mental issue. Like it can be all of those. You are this. You cannot act with anyone else. You cannot engage as part of the team role, except some sugar no-dos or good cigarettes will get you moving again. Spend a couple of scrap before you roll. So if you're ostracized and people don't want to act with you, but they can, or you, even if you wanted to, you don't have the connection with that person. You don't work together unless you spend a bit of scrap where you're like, maybe, we'll share a cigarette, or like I'll drink some Coke to forget my that kind of feeling of blur that I have inside. So that's one thing that happens. And you cannot get a high tie. You cannot sync up with your buddy. If you roll a mix, you always choose the low result, even if your teammate is choosing it as well. Being out is savage. Being out sucks. You do not want to be out. And the reason you don't want to be out is that you can't be a part of the group anymore. Now, if you're out and you act alone, you're not. If you act alone, you're not part of this sort of low result-y thing. That's only when you act with other people, right? So coming back up to acting alone. Do I have acting alone in here? No, I don't. I don't have acting alone in this section. That's okay. So the idea with acting alone is let's use 10 someone's damage as an example. You can't sync up because that's just not something you can do because you're only rolling one die. It's very, very hard to get a high, but you can do it. And it's very easy to get a low or a miss. So it's absolutely something you can do when you're out. You can act alone. And you're probably more effective when you're out, you're probably more effective alone than you are with other people, which kind of says something about that structure, right? Every time I come back to the camera and I see that I don't really have the beard, it like throws me off. But it's great for you guys. All right. What do we? Oh, we want to talk about the perspectives. So the perspectives has been a problem that I've had in making this game and in the way that it's written. It's a difficult game to write, unfortunately, because every move needs to work from 5 different approaches. It needs to work with me rolling alone. It needs to work with us working together. It needs to work with us, but someone's interfering. And it needs to work with a group of us, but only 2 people are choosing. And it needs to work with a group of us, but where one person is conflicting. An example of that, and the reason it was red at the moment, is when you try to forget the war, right? It's got these words like both in there, but what happens when we have many of us working together? Is it just the 2 people that chose? Is it just the like? And then the other one is someone involved. One of them has the word someone involved. No. Oh, this was an idea about bonds originally. Originally, bonds were going to be a binary thing. This is a really early design version that Jesse and I spoke about. Originally, bonds were going to be this binary thing where you would mark off like that you have a bond with someone, and then on a mix, you can choose to take the high result regardless of your role. Then you strain your bond. If you're both bonded to each other, you can both choose to take the higher roll, and then you can only be bonded to one character at a time. But it was this like weird binary track of like I still really like it. I still like a lot of it. But then I had to create this extra thing about like how do you strain that bond and how do you challenge it. So yeah, it really was more work than it was worth. I may come back to this in the future, which is why it's just smaller and not removed, you know? So let's talk about trying to forget the war. So there are 5 approaches. Me alone. So me alone, we don't have to worry about the sync. You and me together, we need to have, this is kind of the default that most of them are written by. So we need to worry about sync for the first time. We also need to have high and low both dynamically different. And what that means, dynamically different, is we want it to mean something that I got the high roll and you didn't. Which is a little bit something that a lot of moves don't do at the moment. You and me in conflict. Now, this is interesting because you and me in conflict needs to be me alone, low roll, standing alone. And this is also something that happens in you and me in conflict, is that if I have the high roll, I might choose not to use it. So we need to have a look at how the low roll stands alone. Then we've got you and me in conflict, low roll, standing alone. We also need to look at low roll as imposing cost. So is the cost on the group / rollers or on the low roller only? Many of us together, and I'm not sure which one's better here. I just know that I need to be aware of that. Many of us together, we need to look at wording like both, all, each. We need to look at how many people are impacted by the move. And we need to look at, I think that's probably about many of us with at least one conflict. So with this one, we kind of need to look at these ones combined, which is give me a sec. I'm trying to think about this one. Many of us with at least one conflict. I'm really curious about this. Whether this is a relevant assessment or not, or whether this just folds into these. I guess we'll have a look. So, for example, let's take this and put it over here and grab, where's my other one? Trying the basic moves? No, this one. And this one. Cool. Okay. So that one goes, okay, cool. So that text is a little bit hard for you to see. What if we fold this in? How do I do that? Like that. Oops. Like that. Okay. Me alone. And me together. You and me in conflict. Many of us together. Many of us with at least one conflict. Okay. So this is something I haven't done. I'm aware it's a problem, but I haven't actually gone through and done it yet. Come on. There we go. Okay. So we will zoom in and we will reduce these in size to, god damn to like 9. And we'll put it there. Okay, that'll work. That'll work. So when you interview with another, nope, that's bad. That's a bad one to start with. So let's start right at the top. Fiction interrogation. When you read the lay of the land, both roll plus luck. So if I'm rolling alone, high, there's good news, low, there's bad news. I choose one of these and I choose one of these. Okay, so that works, right? That works. When I'm alone, if I roll low, then I just get the bad news. So that's okay. Which also means you and me in conflict. That's also okay. Now, is low good as a punishment both for players to choose for themselves and for players interfering to choose for each other? So what's it going to cost us? Who shares our interest? Yeah. So I think you can basically push someone around by choosing a really bad version of this for them. So I'm okay with that. Okay. You and me together. So are high and low dynamically different? Yes, they are. Because if I'm high, then I choose one of these. Low, you choose one of these. Now, maybe we agree. Maybe we know what we're talking about, but that's us working together. That's just effective teamwork. That's fine. Many of us together. Both. Yes. Okay, this is good. Because I do want that to be a both, which I don't want that to be everyone gets to ask the GM from the high list, because then everyone will get a question. And if there's like 4 people rolling together, maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. Huh. Everyone? Maybe every time you roll a sync, you should increase your bonds by 1, because it's you working well with someone. Every sync, increases bonds by 1 for everyone involved? Question mark? That's actually going to annoy me. Okay. All right, cool. So that should work. Now, many of us with at least one conflict. That should work. When you fill them out. So this one's interesting because fill them out's a little bit different. So ask question each of the list below, and that player will ask one back. Sure. Ask them. So me alone. Don't worry about the sync result. Higher roll, lower roll. Is the low interesting? Ask one of the lists below, but you won't like the answer. I think that's pretty good. I think that'll work. The only problem is that's actually a fairly reduced. That's actually a pretty reduced momentum move on its own. This could do with more momentum inherently, meaning this one, and you can go back to the episode where I wrote this if you want more information on it, but basically this generates a lot of momentum because I ask one of you and you ask one back of me, and so we like generate this dialogue. But the lower roll, ask one of the lists below, but you won't like the answer, doesn't generate a lot on its own. But I don't want to stack the. Yeah, no, I think I like it. I think it'll do. Which is that if you're acting alone, you're not going to generate as much momentum. I think that's okay. We'll see how it goes in play. You and me in conflict. Now, this is where it's interesting. You and me in conflict is a very interesting one here. Because if you want to feel me out and I don't want you to, if you want to read me and I don't want you to, we're in this situation where I, as the higher roll, can ask you a question and you will ask one back at me. So I can ask you and it will cost me, or I can just refuse to engage with this. And then you, as a lower roll, have to ask me one, but you won't like the answer, which just means I don't get to ask one back to you. So I'm not sure if I want to add this and their player will ask one back to this. I'm not sure if I want. The only problem there is that there's this weird economy thing of like like if you, okay, so at the moment there are 3 total questions being asked, but and there are 3 characters. So in this one, in you and me together against someone else, there are 3 total characters and there are 3 total questions being asked. In you and me against each other, you ask one of me, and then I ask one back to you, and then I ask another, but I won't like the answer. Yeah, really, really interesting. Really interesting, because the question is, how many questions do I want? And the answer is, I want about 2. I want 2 questions minimum. And at the moment, the lower roll doesn't have that. But if I add and their player will ask one back, then I get 4 questions maximum. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to add the and they ask one back to you to the thing, which the other thing this does is that when you try and fill someone out, you actually both give up. You both give up a question, which means you ask 2 of them and they ask 2 of you. And what it means is if you and I are against each other when we do this move, you're the high roller and I'm the low roller, then you ask me one, I ask you one back, then I ask you one that I won't like the answer to, and you ask me one back, which is kind of cool. Okay, no, I dig that. I dig 4. Four's a good number. Share What Little You Have is a hard one, because Share What Little You Have is a move where interfering is difficult. And the reason interfering is difficult is that I think the only way you can interfere with this is, like, this is not an interfering fictional trigger. You can't interfere with you can't interfere with intimacy. So you and me in conflict is a weird thing where it's like, oh, I'm going to share something with you. Yeah, no, see, this works. This absolutely works. Okay, so you and me in conflict. We're just down here. If I get the high result, all these beautiful, tender moments, we just don't engage with them. We don't do beautiful and tender. We just throw it away. But you ask me these like regretful, hurtful things of your own, which is super cool. There's also enough in this. Like, does this mean we're more than we're pretending it does? There's enough to cause fucking trouble here. Also, when you choose, you kind of decide for each other. So this is an interesting one about if you have a group. Obviously, the questions are only being asked by the people that are playing, that have rolled, but the other characters that are involved are part of this decision making. Now the problem is this text they and all, which is like, okay, so if there's 3 of us and we're hanging out together and I make coffee for you 2 and it's this beautiful tender moment and we're sharing what little we have, after they've answered, all decides if this means something or if you're blowing off steam. If you think it means something, then they add 1 to their bond. So in 2 people, in I make a coffee for you. If you think that me making you coffee means something, I add 1 to my bonds. The question is, if there's 3 people, and I think it means something, do you both add 1 to your bonds? And I think the answer is yes. I think it's a communal thing. So we'll say everyone else adds one to their bonds. And if it doesn't mean something, you and only you reduce awareness. And so I think that's the thing. If it doesn't mean anything, it's just you that reduces your wariness. But if it does mean something, then everyone adds their bonds. And I like that. The issue is, how does that work with conflict, which is that if I'm interfering and you think it means something, I guess that fictionally drives itself away, doesn't it? Which is like, if you are making coffee for you and I'm there and I'm like, I don't want this to be a coffee thing, but then I partake in it, I think I don't think you can interfere with share what little you have. I'd be interested to see what it's like fictionally. We'll figure that out when we get there. Try to forget the war. Me alone. It reminds you of what you've forgotten. Waste a couple of scrap, or ask GM how the war remind you it's close. Man, that is a fucking punishing move. Oh no, but this is the point, right? This is the point, because this is try to sleep alone the move, right? Which is when you try to sleep alone, the GM says you're trying to forget the war. Like, you huddled alone on your bed, you're trying to forget the war. So roll alone. You get the low roll, which is your most likely result. And it's like, it reminds you of what you've forgotten. Choose one. Try in vain to find the happiness you've lost. Waste a couple of scrap on something frivolous and temporary. Or the war doesn't want you forgotten. Ask the GM how the war will remind you it's close. Huh. Right. Ask the GM how the war will remind you it's close. Okay, I like that. I like that a lot, actually. That is a punishing move, but it's meant to be, which I'm on board for. Okay, cool. So let's talk about groups. You and me in conflict, try to forget the war. Yep. Okay, because I can punish you with that just by not choosing. See, these boths, this is the thing, is not home, but it feels like it. Choose one. The moment is simple, but magic, you all reduce your weariness. It has to be you all. It can't be you both, because what if we have 3 people engaging? That's just that. That's just a language problem, which is good. I don't know if I like that enough for a full sync, but whatever. We'll figure it out. When you tend to someone's damage, this is an interesting one, because conflicts are really weird here, especially because of this language, where it'll take a bit more of your meds than you thought. If I'm the low person, I'm not. It won't, like, it's not. They're not my meds. Like, it's someone else's stuff, but I still have to spend scrap to engage in it, and that's the thing, is that I still have to spend scrap to engage with the move. So how do I interfere? Oh, well, no, I don't, because when I interfere, I roll with bonds. Okay, cool. So we need to talk about how this works linguistically. On a hit, what does a hit mean when you're interfering? No, it still goes ahead, right? No, this should be part of the high result. Because I should, if I'm interfering and I get the high result, I should be able to reject this. So the meds take hold easier than you thought. Recover half of the scrap you each spent, which is fine, because this is not part of the interfering section. High with what you've got. You can stop it getting any worse. Erase all the patient's wounds and feel their weariness. They're going to need to sleep it off a bit. Now choose. It means something putting flesh to flesh like this. You and someone of your choice. So this is interesting, because this option doesn't exist in me alone. If I get high on doing this on my own, I don't. That should be damage. It means something putting flesh to flesh like this. You and someone of your choice can add 1 to your bonds. This doesn't work if this is dumb. This is bad language. you and someone else involved and add one to your bonds. But if you're alone and you do that, you can't pick that one. Like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't fictionally make sense. So the question is, and this is actually something that Adam Kobolt's talking about on Twitter today about the golden rule being an excuse for lazy design. Do I just put the caveat that says, or do I just expect that stuff that isn't fictionally relevant can't be chosen? Because otherwise a player will say, I'm tending to my own damage. I choose an amount of scrap, I spend it, I get a high roll. Now choose, it means something putting flesh to flesh like this. I'm going to add one to my bonds. It's like, what the fuck does it mean? Like, what does it mean touching, like handling your own body and doing first aid on yourself? But with two people, that's fantastic. You and someone you touch. Add one to your bonds. Yeah, that's it. Okay. So that's how I do it. So it just says someone you touch, and then if you don't touch someone, you can't pick that one because you're not touching them. That works for me. Okay. You can get through this without heavy meds. I can also reduce awareness 1 point. You can recover half the scrap you spent. Yeah, low, choose one. It'll take more of your meds than you thought. I need to get rid of this. I need take a lot of meds, more than I expected. Much. Whatever you've given them probably wasn't meant for human consumption. The meds you've got technically aren't meant for human consumption. They stay damaged. They stay cold or down, whatever it is. They stay cold or down. Or it's just a patch job. It's likely to fuck them up. They don't rest up. Cool. I'm okay with this now. Braving Cyclones of Daylight. I don't really dig this as a move anyway, but it's there. Choose one from the high list. You run for it, increase your weariness. It's fucking chaos down there. You lose track of something useful available to you. Pick one. You can't stick your head up without getting shot off. You pin down until night falls. You spot an opening and make a break for it. Take an unstable wound. The weird thing is the best thing to do here is to interfere. When someone tries to brave the sniper lines of daylight, the best thing to do is to try to stop them. Because if you interfere, you can choose not to engage with the higher one, which is kind of weird. Maybe it'll be like you make it across, but choose one. What if we say all plus luck, and then you say when you brave the sniper lines, roll plus luck. And then I want it to be like first. This is like inherent in the thing where it's like you run for it, increase everyone involved, increase the weariness of everyone involved. House down there. You lose track of something useful valuable to you, and then the results here are like you get an easy break in the fire and slow the run. Do not increase your weariness. You'll make it across and choose one. It's fucking chaos down here. Instead of that, we're going to say you keep a clear head, even under the pressure. You don't lose track of something useful or valuable. So these are then inherent in the design of it. But it's still you. See, it's still this you problem, which is that if I'm interfering and I don't want to pick one of these, and so this is a really, really interesting problem that I have, where it helps me sometimes and it hurts me sometimes. You in English is both singular and plural, which gives me a lot of interesting approaches here, because does it say you, the individual, gets an easy break, do not increase the individual's weariness? Or does it say not increase anyone's weariness? There's an easy break in the fire and can slow the run. If someone loses track, something useful or valuable. Do not increase anyone's weariness. And then this is you keep it clear. This is where like y'all is a really, really useful thing, because sometimes I want you to be singular, sometimes I want it to be plural, and sometimes I want it to be ambiguous, but I don't get to do all of them. So you keep a clear head even under the pressure. And this is no one loses track of something useful or valuable. So as the high roll, you're picking for everyone, which is great. Take an unstable wound. This should just be like, get fucked up. Can't stick your head up without getting shot off. You get pinned down until night falls. Miss MC move. So you need to break in the fire and can slow in. Breaking the fire. God, I hate that. Allowing for a slow jog. There's a large break in the fire. You can move across safely. Can't risk sticking your head up without getting shot off. You get pinned down until night falls. Cool. So this is in this, I just had to move the cost of the move, like the inherent cost. So there's two different costs that I'm generating in a lot of moves. One of them is an inherent cost, and the other is a choice of a cost. So, for example, in 10 to someone's damage, the scrap that you spend to heal them is an inherent cost. You cannot do that move without spending the scrap. I had to move those problems from Brave the Sniper Lines in Daylight from a choice cost into an inherent cost and let the choice be removing one of them. I like it. It's all right. It's all right. Go toe to toe. So go toe to toe. The reason go toe to toe is red at the moment is because this doesn't work as both you and me operating together and you and me operating against a third party. Sorry, that's not true. It doesn't work as both you and me operating together against a third party and you versus me. It originally it was like the idea was that when you you tell me what you're willing to offer, and then I impose a cost upon you. But that doesn't work if it's you and me working against a third party. Yeah. So this one kind of needs to be rewritten, and I need to spend like 20 minutes just looking at it and just playing with the language. I really don't want to do it at the moment. Escape the War. We never talked about Escape the War. So Escape the War is the actual like character exit point thing. The big thing about Escape the War is that you basically, especially if you roll low, you have to choose to either steal from everyone else, or that's it, or stay behind. Yeah, so that's the thing. That's the thing that happens. So the high result steals scrap from the group, which is important but not critical. Or steals a valuable item, steals something that will function as a bribe, and then choose to stay or go. This is another one of those Monsterheartsy things I was talking about before. Either steal and stash from everyone who isn't coming with you, or cut your losses and stay behind. I really like that. That's one of my favorite pieces of writing so far in this event. So become the war, no one's interfering. You can't interfere with someone becoming the war. You can't. You're just doing it yourself. I think the only thing I'd do is probably change that to 1 to 3 and make that 1 or 2. Because that fits in better with what I want with what I want the interfere move to, not the interfere move, the rolling alone move when you act alone move thing. This also needs more fictional stuff in here. Yeah, and it's also choose one, but it's not written as that. Choose one. Yep. So this, I want it to be more like this. 2 minus both, because I don't want this to happen very often. I want this to be just on the table, but I don't want it to really be a thing that happens when you go without. So going without is like the weariness thing, which maybe I can just put go without as like, maybe I can use the term go without a lot more, or maybe like when you mark weariness or something like that, or when you get weary or whatever. I don't really know. And when you're out, that stuff happens. Cool. Man. I'm incredibly jet lagged. So at this point, I want to talk about where I'm going forward, which is I want to talk about playbooks next, I think. My biggest plan is to get this in a playtestable format by the end of June, which is also my exam month. So it's a month from now, but it's also my exams. So I'm pretty fucking swamped over the next month. But I want to get a playtestable. I want to get it on the table in July. And so I think I want some sort of playbooks, and I think I want like a safe house playbook, which will have all the advanced moves on it, and I want character playbook, which has like you and how you fit into the story. So next time we talk, we're going to talk about either bonds, hex, and social stats, or we're going to talk about different ways that different playbooks happen, and which ones I really like and which ones I don't really like. And why I do and don't like them. And then we're going to talk about some design stuff there, and then I'm going to make some decisions. But until then, thank you so much for spending time with me. It's 10:30 in the morning, and I feel like it's about 3 in the morning. I slept last night, God knows how, but I'm through it now. What else can we say? I'm working with a good friend. I won't put a name out at the moment until it's done, but I'm working with a good friend on getting some visual design stuff done for this episode, so I can stop using that same logo. And I'm more thinking about a bit of identity stuff. On Friday the Friday the 1st, Australian time at 7 or 7:30 p.m. I'm going to be having a chat to Haley and V of the Story Brewers about their games and their designs. And we're going to talk about Alas for the Awful Sea. We're going to talk about Good Society. We're going to talk about their failures. We're going to talk about where they've stumbled and what they've learned from those stumbles. We're going to talk about stuff they'd love to change now that it's out in the world. And I'm going to try and get Haley to open up a bit about the game that I play tested with her at EtonCon. So we'll see about that. So that is Friday. What's that? 5 days from now. Until then, my Twitter is always open with stuff from people. 200 Word RPG, I think closes like today or something like that. Get on that if you haven't. It's amazing. It's worth your time. I've seen so much really cool design stuff come out of that. And talking about like failing forward and failing fast, like 200 Word RPG is great for failing forward and failing fast. You can write one in an afternoon. You can spend a week and a half on one. It's great. It's an absolute joy. And mine's up there, and you can see what I'm looking at in my minimalist design. Until Friday, I think. I don't know if I'll get a chance to do one before then. I don't know if I'll feel up to doing one before then. But Friday will be my next one. And for those of you that are watching this live or in the next probably hour, Haley is about to do, I think maybe V's joining her, is about to do a chat on Alas for the Awful Sea. So I'm going to jump straight over to her Twitter at Storybrewers and see what that's all about. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining me. It was an absolute joy. If you're interested in joining me for playtesting this, just let me know. Just get in touch, and we'll have a chat in July. Till then, keep hooting, little owlets. Keep hooting along. Keep giving a hoot.